furnace beneath the baths has never once gone fully cold in the keeper's memory, and it is the low, steady breath of that furnace, felt more than heard through the stone floor beneath his sleeping room, that eases him awake long before the city outside has properly stirred. He lies still for a moment in the dark, feeling the faint warmth radiating up through the floor into the thin mattress beneath him. A warmth that has been present every single night of his years tending this particular bathhouse, so constant and so familiar that its absence, on the rare occasion the furnace has needed to be fully rebuilt, has always struck him as more unsettling than any ordinary cold ever could, a wrongness in the world's basic order rather than a simple discomfort. His room sits just off the furnace chamber itself, close enough that he can hear, even now in the deep hours before dawn, the occasional soft collapse of embers settling lower in the firebox, tended through the night by the young slave whose entire duty consists of keeping that fire fed at precisely the right intensity, never so high as to waste fuel needlessly, never so low as to let the great bronze boilers above lose their heat before the first bathers arrive. The keeper trusts this particular boy's diligence, has trained him carefully over the past year, and yet some old habit of his own, formed across decades of ultimate responsibility for this entire operation, will not quite let him stay abed until full light, without first descending to check the fire himself. He lets his mind move slowly, in these last unhurried minutes before rising, across the small accumulated inventory of a life spent almost entirely within these walls, the particular sound the main bronze doors make when swung fully open each morning, a low groan followed by a lighter metallic settle, the exact number of paces between his own doorway and the frigidarium's edge, a distance he could walk blind, and has, on more than one early morning, effectively done, the faces of regular patrons who will, within a few hours, begin arriving in their familiar unvarying order, each one as predictable in his habits as the sun's own daily arc. There is no restlessness in this recollection, only the settled, almost bodily comfort of a routine so completely absorbed into his own daily rhythm that thinking through it requires no more effort than breathing, requires conscious thought. Somewhere above him, beyond the low ceiling of his small room, he can just make out the faint creak of the building's upper structure, shifting slightly as the night's cooler air continues its slow work against stone and mortar that spent the previous day absorbing considerable heat, the whole structure breathing, in its own patient architectural way, exactly as he himself is now beginning to breathe more fully awake. He rises in the dark, wrapping a simple woolen cloak over his tunic against the pre-dawn chill that has settled into the bathhouse's outer rooms, even though the inner chambers, closer to the furnace, remain noticeably warmer, and makes his way by memory alone through the unlit service corridor that runs behind the main bathing halls, his bare feet finding each familiar unevenness in the stone floor without needing to look down, a route so thoroughly learned across the years that he could, and occasionally has, walked it with his eyes fully closed. The furnace chamber itself, when he reaches it, glows with a deep orange light that throws long shifting shadows across the low brick vaulting overhead, and the boy tending it looks up briefly at his approach, unsurprised, since the keeper's early visits have become their own small, unremarkable ritual between them. The heat here is immediate and enveloping, a heat entirely different in character from the dry heat of a summer afternoon outside, this heat carrying a faint mineral tang from the fire itself and a heavier, damper undertone from the great banks of water sitting directly above in the bronze boilers, slowly, patiently absorbing exactly the warmth the furnace has spent all night producing. The keeper crouches for a moment beside the firebox, checking the coals with a practiced eye, noting the particular deep red orange that tells him the fire has been maintained correctly through the night, neither flagging nor overfed, and he exchanges a few quiet words with the boy about the wood supply, whether enough seasoned oak remains stacked in the yard to see them through the coming days. The boy answers without looking away from the fire itself, his attention fixed on the small adjustments his work requires, even during this brief conversation. And the keeper recognizes in that fixed attention the same quality he himself has spent decades cultivating, a kind of steady, undramatic vigilance that asks for no praise and rarely receives any, precisely because its success looks, from the outside, exactly like nothing happening at all. He reaches down and adds a single split log himself, more out of old habit than necessity, watching the new wood catch slowly along one edge before settling into the same steady burn as the coals beneath it. And for a moment, the two of them simply watch the fire together, in a comfortable silence built from months of exactly this same shared early morning ritual. The heat here presses pleasantly against his still sleepy skin, and he allows himself a few extra moments longer than strictly required, savoring the particular privacy of this hour, before straightening again and making his way back through the same dark corridor toward the bathhouse's main chambers, this time continuing past his own sleeping room toward the great vaulted halls that will, within a few hours, be filled with the entire noisy, steaming life of the city's daily bathing ritual. He crosses first through the frigidarium, the coldest of the bathing rooms, its high vaulted ceiling still lost in pre-dawn shadow, its central pool utterly still and dark, catching only the faintest suggestion of the coming morning through a narrow clerestory window far above. The room holds its own particular silence at this hour, a silence made more noticeable rather than less by the small persistent sounds that never fully leave it, even in the deepest quiet. A faint drip somewhere along the pool's marble edge, the almost imperceptible creak of the great bronze doors settling slightly as the temperature around them shifts with the advancing dawn. He runs one hand along the cool marble rim of the pool as he passes, an old habit rather than any necessary inspection, feeling the particular smoothness worn into the stone by countless hands before his own, generations of bathers and attendants alike having polished this same edge simply by the accumulated weight of ordinary, daily contact. He pauses a moment longer at the frigidarium's far end, where a small statue of a river god reclines in a shallow niche, water trickling from an urn beneath his marble arm into a narrow channel that feeds, eventually, into the main pool itself. The sound of that thin trickle, the room's only true voice at this hour, patient and continuous, filling the vast cold silence with something just short of true quiet. He has always found this particular corner of the building the most restful in the entire structure, precisely because it demands nothing of him. No fire to check, no valve to adjust, simply the sound of water finding its own unhurried way down worn stone, exactly as it has found that same way for as long as he has worked here. Beyond the frigidarium lies the tepidarium, noticeably warmer even now before the day's heating has properly begun, its walls lined with the same simple mosaic patterns he has looked at so many thousands of times that he could trace their geometry from memory alone. Small repeating waves in blue and white tesserae running in a continuous band around the room's perimeter, a design chosen, he has always assumed, precisely because its calm, unbroken rhythm suits a room meant for easing bathers gradually from cold toward heat, rather than shocking them abruptly from one extreme into the other. He runs his eye along a section near the eastern wall where a few tesserae have come loose over the years, making a mental note, as he makes most mornings, to have the mosaic setter called in again before the gaps widen further, though the note carries no real urgency behind it, since the same small gap has waited patiently for repair through several previous seasons already, and shows no particular sign of demanding attention today above any other day. The benches lining the tepidarium's walls, simple slabs of smooth worn stone, still hold a faint trace of yesterday's warmth even now, hours after the last bather departed, the whole room retaining heat with the same patient thoroughness that characterizes every part of this carefully designed structure, built by men long since dead, whose names the keeper does not know, but whose careful understanding of how heat moves through stone and air alike he has come, across years of daily reliance on their work, to deeply respect. And beyond that, deepest and hottest of all the chambers, lies the caldarium, where the true business of the furnace makes itself most immediately felt. The floor here noticeably warm, even through the soles of his sandals, heated directly from below by the same system of channels and flues that carries the furnace's warmth throughout the entire building's understructure. A hidden architecture of heat that the ordinary bather never sees or thinks about, experiencing only its final comfortable result, while remaining entirely unaware of the small army of unseen labor his own included required to produce it reliably, day after day, without fail. He crosses to the far wall where a bronze pipe descends from a small opening near the ceiling, part of the arrangement that draws water from the aqueduct feeding the entire district, and he checks, as he checks every morning, that the flow remains steady and unobstructed, running a hand briefly beneath the pipe's outlet to confirm the water's temperature has not shifted unexpectedly overnight. The aqueduct itself lies far beyond the bathhouse's walls, its water travelling some considerable distance from hills the keeper has never personally visited, and he has always found something quietly remarkable in this fact, that the comfort of his own small daily world depends so completely on water gathered and channeled across a distance he cannot even properly picture, delivered here with the same patient reliability the sun itself demonstrates each morning, asking nothing in return beyond the ordinary maintenance he and men like him provide to keep its final short journey through the bathhouse's own pipes and channels running smoothly. He checks the water level in the caldarium's smaller heated pool, adjusts a bronze valve slightly to increase the flow of hot water drawn up from the boilers above, and stands for a moment simply absorbing the particular heavy warmth of this room, a warmth that will, within the hour, begin drawing in the city's earliest bathers, old men, mostly. At this hour, those who prefer to complete their bathing before the crowds and noise of midday properly arrive, along with the occasional labourer seeking to ease muscles before a long day's work rather than after one. By the time full dawn has arrived, its early light finally reaching down through the high clerestory windows to touch the topmost curves of the vaulted ceilings, the bathhouse has come fully alive around him. Slaves and freedmen attendants move through the corridors, carrying stacks of folded linen towels, fresh oil flasks, the small bronze strigils used for scraping sweat and oil from the skin after exercise, everything arranged and prepared with the particular brisk efficiency that a well-run establishment requires if it hopes to serve, across the course of a single day, several hundred bathers with any semblance of order. The keeper takes his position near the main entrance as the doors are finally opened to the street, greeting the first arrivals by name where he knows them, which is most mornings nearly everyone, since regular bathing at this particular establishment has, across the years he has managed it, settled into the same comfortable daily habit for a fairly stable core of local patrons are retired. Centurion, who arrives without exception at the same hour every single day regardless of weather, a pair of merchant brothers who bathe together and argue, cheerfully and constantly, about matters of business the entire time, an elderly widow's freedman sent daily to collect gossip from the baths on his mistress's behalf nearly as much as to actually bathe. The morning hours settle into their familiar rhythm, the low murmur of conversation echoing oddly off the high vaulted ceilings, amplified and distorted by the same acoustics that make even a whispered remark carry unexpectedly far across the water's surface, the rhythmic splash of bathers entering and leaving the various pools, the particular wet slap of bare feet against warm marble, the occasional laughter of men gathered in loose conversation at the edge of the caldarium's steaming water, entirely unconcerned with modesty or privacy in a way that has always struck outsiders as remarkable, but which the keeper himself, having spent his entire working life within these walls, no longer even notices as unusual. He moves continuously through the bathhouse across these hours, not performing any single fixed task, but rather attending to the countless small details that keep the entire operation functioning smoothly, checking that the attendants restocking oil flasks have not let any run empty, resolving a minor dispute between two bathers over a misplaced towel, signaling to the furnace boy through a small speaking tube built into the wall for exactly this purpose when the caldarium's water begins running slightly cooler than the standard the establishment's reputation depends upon maintaining. This constant low-level vigilance is, in its own way, exactly analogous to the furnace itself, a steady, unglamorous attention that nobody using the baths ever consciously notices, precisely because it succeeds. And it is this invisible success, more than any single dramatic intervention, that the keeper has come to understand as the true measure of his own competence at this work. Midday brings the bathhouse's greatest crowds, the establishment filling with a full cross-section of the neighborhood's population, merchants taking a break from their business, off-duty soldiers, artisans finished with a morning's labor, alongside the usual scattering of idle young men who seem to spend the greater part of every day here, regardless of any particular need to bathe at all, drawn more by the bath's function as a social gathering place than by any genuine desire for cleanliness. The noise at this hour reaches its daily peak. Dozens of overlapping conversations, occasional shouts of greeting between friends arriving separately, the persistent underlying wet acoustic hum of water and steam and marble that never fully quiets throughout the busiest hours of the day. A masseur works near the tepidarium's edge, his strong hands working oil into the shoulders of a heavy-set merchant who groans with each firm stroke. The scent of the oil itself, warmed slightly by the room's ambient heat, carrying a faint herbal sharpness that drifts pleasantly across the surrounding benches. The merchant's companion waits nearby, idly flicking through a set of wax tablets, muttering under his breath about a shipment of pottery delayed somewhere along the coast road. And the keeper, passing near enough to catch the fragment of complaint, offers no comment of his own, having learned long ago that the baths function, among their many other purposes, as a kind of informal exchange where half the city's minor business grievances get aired long before they ever reach any formal forum. Further along, near the exercise yard attached to the bathhouse's outer wall, a small group tosses a ball back and forth in the loose, unstructured way men exercise before bathing rather than after, working up exactly enough sweat to justify the pleasure of the hot rooms that follow, their laughter occasionally sharp and sudden when someone fumbles a catch. The whole game unfolding with no particular stakes beyond the simple pleasure of movement and company in the strong midday sun. One young man, clearly new to the neighborhood, stands somewhat apart from the game's easy familiarity, watching with a particular hesitant interest of someone who wants to be invited to join, but does not yet know the group well enough to simply insert himself. And the keeper, noticing this small unspoken hesitation as he passes, says a quiet word to one of the regular players, who obligingly waves the newcomer over without any fuss, the ball changing hands and the game absorbing one more player as easily as the pool itself absorbs one more bather. The keeper passes among all of it with the easy familiarity of a man entirely at home in noise and crowd, occasionally stopping to exchange a few words, occasionally simply observing, his attention always partly given over to the countless small operational details that this volume of daily business generates a blocked drain in the appetiterium, requiring the attention of a slave with a length of stiff wire, a wealthy patron's request for a private oil blend to be prepared before his arrival tomorrow, a delivery of fresh charcoal arriving at the yard gate, requiring someone to verify the weight against what was promised, the appetiterium, the changing room where bathers leave their clothing before proceeding into the bathing halls proper, presents its own particular daily challenge, since theft of unattended garments remains a constant minor concern in any bathhouse busy enough to draw a genuine cross-section of the city's population. The keeper employs, as most reputable establishments do, a dedicated attendant whose sole responsibility is watching over the stored clothing, and he checks in with this man periodically throughout the day, confirming that the small wooden cubbies remain properly organized, that nothing has gone missing, that the inevitable occasional dispute over whose tunic belongs to whom has been settled fairly and without lingering resentment on either side. Today, the attendant reports, with the particular weary patience of a man recounting a minor drama already fully resolved, that two similar grey tunics had been briefly mixed up by their owners, both men convinced with total sincerity that the other had taken the wrong garment, until a small darned patch near one hem finally settled the matter beyond dispute, and both men had laughed at their own earlier certainty. The keeper listens to this small account with the same genuine interest he gives most of the bathhouse's minor daily dramas, understanding that these small frictions and their equally small resolutions are, in their own way, as much a part of the establishment's proper functioning as the furnace itself, evidence that the whole complex, noisy, crowded system continues to sort itself out day after day without any serious harm coming to anyone's dignity or property. He glances along the rows of small wooden cubbies as he passes, most now filled with neatly folded garments, sandals tucked beneath, the occasional small leather pouch of coin, or a wax tablet left with an owner's belongings rather than carried into the bathing halls where dampness would ruin it. And he notes with quiet satisfaction that the attendant has, as usual, kept everything in its proper order, despite the considerable volume of bodies passing through this single narrow room across the busiest hours of the day. Between the morning and midday surges, the keeper retreats briefly to a small office adjoining the entrance hall to review the establishment's daily accounts with the freedman who manages this side of the business on his behalf, a quiet, careful man who keeps meticulous record of the admission fees collected, the oil and charcoal purchased, the wages owed to the various attendants, masseurs, and slaves, whose combined labor keeps the entire operation running smoothly. Today's ledger shows a delivery of good seasoned oak arrived slightly under the promised weight, and the keeper makes a note to raise the discrepancy with the supplier before the week is out, not out of any particular anger, but simply the same patient, exacting attention he brings to every other aspect of the bathhouse's operation, understanding that small unaddressed discrepancies, left unchecked, have a way of quietly compounding into larger problems over time. The freedman also reports a request from a wealthy patron further up the hill, a man who has recently taken to sending his own household slave ahead each morning to reserve a private hour in the caldarium before the general crowds arrive, and the keeper considers this request for a moment, weighing the modest additional fee such an arrangement would justify against the disruption it might cause to the establishment's normal early rhythm, before agreeing to it on the condition that the private hour conclude well before the doors open to the wider public. This kind of small negotiation, balancing a valued patron's particular wishes against the smooth, ordinary functioning of the whole establishment, occupies a fair portion of the keeper's quieter administrative hours, work invisible to nearly every bather who passes through the doors, but essential, in its own unglamorous way, to the bathhouse's continued good reputation and steady daily custom. As the afternoon wears on, the crowd's character shifts slightly, the earlier arrivals departing gradually to attend to whatever business or family obligations structure the remainder of their day, replaced by a new wave of bathers whose own schedules allow only for this later hour craftsman finishing a full day's labor. Household slaves sent to bathe on behalf of masters too occupied themselves to attend in person, a scattering of travelers passing through the city who have sought out the baths specifically as recommended by whichever local acquaintance directed them here. The keeper takes his own brief midday meal standing near the furnace chamber, simple bread and a portion of olives shared with the furnace boy, who eats his own meal in the brief lull between the morning's heaviest demand and the afternoon's renewed pressure, both of them content in this small, quiet interlude to simply sit for a few minutes near the fire's steady warmth, without any particular conversation required between them. The easy, comfortable silence of two people whose working lives are bound together closely enough that words are not always necessary to communicate the small daily satisfaction of a task so far well managed. By mid-afternoon, the light through the high clerestory windows has shifted its angle considerably, no longer striking the tops of the vaulted ceilings, but reaching further down the walls, catching the mosaic patterns at a lower, warmer angle that brings out colors the morning's more vertical light had left comparatively flat. The keeper has learned, across his years managing this space, to read the entire day's progress simply from the shifting quality and angle of this filtered light moving slowly across the same familiar surfaces. A natural clock requiring no water vessel or sundial, simply the patient accumulated knowledge of exactly how the sun's path across the sky translates, hour by hour, into the particular play of light and shadow within these specific vaulted rooms. The late afternoon brings its own particular surge of business, as those who work until the day's natural end arrive, seeking the bath's restorative comfort before returning home for the evening meal. And the keeper finds this stretch of the day, despite its considerable demands, among his favorites. The crowd at this hour carrying a distinct mood of earned relaxation rather than the more restless social energy of midday. Men soaking in the warm water with the particular loose-shouldered ease of people whose working obligations for the day have genuinely concluded. Conversation slower and more contented, less urgent, laughter arriving more easily and lingering longer. He walks through the caldarium during this hour and finds the retired centurion, true to his unfailing daily habit, soaking near the pool's edge with his eyes closed, and the old soldier greets him without opening them, simply by name, recognizing his particular tread on the warm marble floor. After so many years of exactly this same daily encounter, they exchange a few unhurried words about nothing of any real consequence, the quality of today's water heat, a minor complaint about a draft near the tepidarium's western door that the keeper promises, as he has promised several times before, to have properly sealed before the colder months fully arrive. The old man mentions, as he sometimes does in these unhurried late afternoon exchanges, some small fragment of memory from his years of service far from this city. A winter camp somewhere along a cold northern frontier. A river crossing that had nearly gone badly wrong. Offered not as any grand tale, but simply as the kind of loose, half-formed recollection that surfaces easily in the particular relaxed state the hot water induces. The keeper has heard variations of most of these fragments many times before across the years, the details shifting slightly with each retelling the way any memory shifts with enough repetition. But he listens each time with the same unfeigned attention, understanding that the old soldier's daily visit is worth as much for this small ritual of remembering aloud as it is for the water's physical comfort, and that his own willingness to listen, however many times the story has already been told, is itself a small but real part of what the bathhouse offers a man who has otherwise outlived most of the companions who once shared these particular memories firsthand. The old man finally opens his eyes as their conversation winds down, squinting slightly in the caldarium's steam-softened light, and thanks the keeper with the same simple nod he offers every single day before settling back into his silent soak, and the keeper moves on, leaving the old man to his rest, both of them satisfied by the small, entirely unremarkable comfort of a routine, so thoroughly established that it requires almost no active maintenance at all, beyond simple continued repetition. As evening approaches and the crowd finally begins its steady thinning, the bathhouse's noise gradually softens from its daytime din into something quieter and more contemplative. The last bathers of the day, generally those who value the bath's quieter, later hours, specifically for the calm they offer. A handful of men reading quietly near the tepidarium's edge. A small group engaged in a slow, unhurried game of dice in the exercise yard as the light outside finally begins its true decline toward dusk. The keeper begins as the light fades, his own methodical process of preparing the bathhouse for its nightly closing, checking each chamber in turn, confirming that no bather has been overlooked in some quiet corner, signaling to the attendants that the final call for departure should now be given. Walking the perimeter of each pool one last time, simply to confirm the water's clarity and level, before the long overnight period, during which only the furnace boy's steady attention will maintain the entire structure's readiness for tomorrow. The doors are finally closed to the street as full dusk settles over the city outside, and the bathhouse, so recently filled with the accumulated noise of hundreds of daily visitors, falls into a particular hollow quiet that the keeper has come, across his years of closing this same building every single evening, to find strangely peaceful rather than lonely the vast vaulted spaces, now echoing only with his own footsteps and the occasional distant murmur of the furnace boy moving about below. The water in each pool now perfectly still, catching what little light remains in long calm reflections along the marble walls. He walks a final slow circuit through the entire building before retiring, checking that every lamp not needed for the overnight watch has been properly extinguished, that the great bronze doors are securely barred, that the modest strongbox holding the day's admission fees has been properly secured in its designated place. And it is during this quiet final circuit, more than at any other point in his long working day, that he finds himself most aware of the building's particular architecture, the way its vast curved ceilings seem, in near darkness and near silence, considerably larger and more solemn than they ever appeared during the day's crowded business. The same acoustics that amplify daytime chatter into overwhelming noise, now amplifying instead the smallest sounds of his own solitary passage, his sandals against marble, his own breathing, the faint distant hiss of steam still rising, very gently from the surface of the caldarium's slowly cooling water. In the apoditerium, now entirely empty of both bathers and garments, he pauses to run a hand along the row of quiet wooden cubbies, each one swept clean by the attendant before departing for the evening, and he finds himself thinking, as he sometimes does in this particular hushed hour, of the sheer accumulated volume of ordinary human life that passes through this one unremarkable room every single day. Merchants and soldiers and slaves and old widowers, each arriving briefly, leaving some small trace of themselves in the worn places along a bench or the particular smoothness of a cubby's edge, before moving on again into whatever the remainder of their own day requires of them. The bathhouse itself simply continuing on afterward, unbothered, ready to receive an entirely new procession of ordinary lives again come morning. He checks the frigidarium last, as he checks it every evening, drawn by some old habit to end his closing circuit at the coldest and quietest of the chambers, and stands for a moment beside the small river god's niche, listening to the same thin, patient trickle of water that greeted him at the very start of his day, the sound entirely unchanged by everything that has happened in the building around it since dawn, indifferent to the crowd's noise and the furnace's heat alike, simply continuing its own small, unhurried task exactly as it has continued it every hour of every day for as long as the keeper has worked here. He eats his own evening meal simply, seated on a low stool near the furnace chamber's steady warmth, bread and a portion of lentils prepared earlier by the small household that manages the bathhouse's modest kitchen, a cup of watered wine taken slowly as the last of the daylight fades entirely from the high windows above, and the building settles fully into the deep, warm dark that will hold it until morning. The furnace boy joins him for this final meal of the day as well, the two of them talking quietly now about tomorrow's expected business, whether the weather looks likely to hold fair, whether the wood supply will need replenishing again before the week's end, The easy, unhurried conversation of two people whose entire working partnership rests on this same daily rhythm, repeated so many times that neither needs to explain anything to the other anymore. The boy mentions, between unhurried bites of bread, a small worry about one of the flue channels beneath the caldarium that seemed, earlier in the day, to be drawing slightly less evenly than usual. And the keeper listens carefully, asking a few precise questions about exactly when the boy first noticed the change and whether it had worsened or stayed constant through the afternoon, before deciding together that they will inspect the channel properly in the morning once the fire has cooled enough to permit a safe look inside. This small shared problem solving, offered and received without any particular urgency, is itself one more expression of the same steady vigilance that keeps the entire bathhouse functioning. Two people quietly and carefully attending to the invisible mechanics that everyone else who passes through these halls simply takes for granted. Firelight moves gently across both their faces as they finish the last of the meal, the flames now burning low and steady for their long overnight task, and the keeper feels, in this quiet shared hour, the particular satisfaction of a long day's work properly concluded, every chamber checked, every account reviewed, every small worry either resolved or set aside until morning, with a clear plan already in place for addressing it. Before finally retiring to his own small room, the keeper makes one last visit to the furnace chamber itself, confirming that the boy has banked the coals correctly for the long overnight burn that must sustain enough heat to have the water properly warmed again by tomorrow's dawn opening. Watching for a few final minutes as the boy settles into his own narrow cot, positioned close enough to the firebox to wake at the slightest change in the fire's behavior. A duty the keeper himself performed for several years in his own youth, before eventually rising to his current position of full responsibility for the entire establishment. He returns finally to his own room, the same steady warmth still radiating faintly up through the floor beneath his sleeping mat, and lies down with the particular satisfied tiredness of a day spent entirely in motion, attending to 100 small necessary details that individually seem unremarkable, but that together, day after day, produce the continuous, reliable comfort that the entire neighborhood has come, across years of habit, to simply expect and rely upon, without ever needing to think consciously about everything required to produce it. He listens, drifting towards sleep, to the building's particular nighttime sounds, the occasional soft shift and settle of cooling stone, the faint continued murmur of water somewhere in the vast dark pools beyond his walls, the very distant sound of the city itself continuing its own evening business beyond the bathhouse's outer walls, carts still moving on distant streets, a dog barking somewhere several blocks away, the general low hum of a large city that never fully falls silent, even in its quietest hours. Somewhere further off, muffled by distance and by the bathhouse's own thick walls, he can just make out the faint sound of a lyre being played somewhere in a neighboring courtyard, a few simple repeating phrases rather than any full composed piece, drifting in and out of audibility as the night air shifts, and he finds himself listening for it each time it fades, a small private pleasure requiring no effort beyond simply remaining still enough to notice. Beneath all of it, felt rather than heard, the furnace continues its own steady work exactly as it has continued through every night of his years managing this place, a patient, unglamorous heat sustained through the dark hours by one boy's quiet vigilance, preparing, invisibly and without any fanfare, for the moment tomorrow when the doors will open once more and the entire noisy, steaming, communal life of the baths will begin again exactly as it always begins. Precisely on time, precisely as reliable as the furnace itself, he thinks, in these last unfocused minutes before sleep fully claims him, of the small unresolved matter of the flue channel, already scheduled for tomorrow's inspection, and finds that even this small lingering thought carries no real weight of worry behind it, simply the settled confidence of a problem already identified and already, in its own modest way, already being addressed. He thinks of the old centurion's story, told yet again today in some slightly different shape than the last telling, and finds himself hoping, in the same vague, drifting way thoughts arrive at this hour, that the old man will keep arriving at his same unfailing hour for many more years yet, that the particular comfort of that daily unvarying visit will continue exactly as it has continued for as long as either of them can remember. He thinks of the young man drawn hesitantly into the ball game in the exercise yard, of the two mismatched grey tunics finally sorted by their telling darned patch, of the wealthy patron's request for a private morning hour, already arranged, already settled, one more small piece of tomorrow's day already fitted correctly into its place before tomorrow has even properly arrived. None of these thoughts carry any particular narrative weight or urgency. They simply surface and dissolve again in loose, unhurried succession, the way steam rises briefly from the caldarium's surface before dispersing into the vast, cool air of the vaulted ceiling above. Each one true, each one already softening at its edges into the deeper wordless quiet that always precedes his own sleep. The city outside continues its own distant murmur, indifferent to whether he remains awake to hear it, and the furnace beneath him continues its own patient breathing, exactly as it has breathed every single night of his years in this place, needing nothing further from him now until the light returns. His eyes grow heavier, the day's accumulated small satisfactions settling into the particular contentment of a job thoroughly and competently done, and as sleep finally arrives, his last drifting thought is not of any single dramatic event from the day just past, since the day, like nearly every day before it, contained no such drama at all, but simply of the water level in the caldarium, already noted as correct, and the coals already banked, already exactly as they should be, everything in its proper place, everything ready, as it always is, for morning. Outside, the city settles further into its own late-night quiet, the streets emptying gradually of all but the occasional watchman making his own slow patrol, lamplight flickering here and there behind shuttered windows before being extinguished one by one as households retire for the night. And beneath the Bathhouse's silent vaulted halls, beneath the still dark water of three great pools waiting patiently for morning, the furnace holds its steady, faithful heat exactly as it has held it every single night without fail, a small persistent warmth at the very center of a sleeping building, at the very center of a sleeping street, at the very center, in its own small, unremarkable way, of an entire sleeping city that has, across so many generations, come to depend on precisely this kind of patient, unglamorous, endlessly repeated care.